sees something he doesn't want to report? Y'all know what he says? I know nothing. I see nothing. I know nothing. And you've been following, those of you who've been here from the last two sermons and continuing today, is I think that we are forming at Grace and Truth the Know Nothing Club. It's my understanding historically there actually was a political party at one time, the Know Nothing Party. I have my history correct. But the Know Nothing we're talking about is taken from Jesus' example of when he prayed when he prayed on the cross in Luke chapter 23. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. They don't know what they're doing. Last week then, I looked at, Father, forgive me, for I don't know what I'm doing. Taken from the thief on the cross who was hanging there, and there were two thieves on the cross with Jesus. You might remember that story, and one of them was railing against Jesus and saying, will you say you're Messiah? Get out from there and save yourself and others. And the guy said, man, you know what you're doing. This guy doesn't deserve anything. We're the ones who deserve it. And I pulled from that the phrase, Father, forgive me, for I don't know what I'm doing. Not comfortable. Neither one of those words or phrases are comfortable for me. Because when I say to you, Father, forgive you because you don't know what you're doing, I lose my authority then to accuse you. That you really did do that to harm me. You really did do that. So when I say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, it makes me uncomfortable sometimes because I lose what I often feel is a little bit of power in the relationship. You know what I'm talking about? Where you can say, well, I know they didn't what they were doing. They meant to hurt me. You know what I'm saying? That kind of thing. And so we can hang on to it. Secondly, the second phrase is uncomfortable for me too because it says, Father, forgive me, for I don't know what I'm doing. And how many of you really like it when somebody tells you you don't know what you're doing? You really like that at all? I mean, especially if you think you know. And most of us think we know most about everything. We used a football analogy last weekend where you talk about, people can sit and watch a television show, a football game, basketball game, baseball game, any kind of performance, American Idol for that matter. How many of y'all know that they really do know how bad they sound? It has been startling to me to watch these TV shows where people actually try to sing, and they actually think they can sing. How many of y'all have compassion for somebody who thinks they can sing on national television? Huh? It's hard to hear sometimes because they actually don't know. So I suggest to you, if you're a fan of a show like that you remember the phrase, Father, forgive them. Well, they don't know what they're doing. Mama lied to them. The auntie lied to them. Grandmother lied to them. Oh, baby, you're just the best thing. I think you need to be on American Idol. They believe it. Perhaps. Yeah.
This is what? Not what you need to be.
This is not what you need to do. That's what Simon said. And Simon says that it's true. Now, today I want us to take another step in this story, the story that comes right after Jesus' death and resurrection. And it's a story of two men. It doesn't signify exactly who they were, but they were on a road to Emmaus. And they were walking on this road to Emmaus, it says, and they were walking together and they were discussing things. Luke chapter 24 is where you'll find this story. We'll have it on the screen here, and beginning at verse 13. And the same day, two of them were walking to the village of Emmaus, about 7 miles out of Jerusalem. They were deep in conversation, going over all these things that had happened. The death and resurrection story of Jesus. In the middle of their talk, and question, Jesus came up and walked along with them. So here he is. But they were not able to recognize who he was. When I read and study that this week, I thought, I wonder how many times Jesus has been walking alongside me and I didn't recognize him. Wait, that's one thing you can pull from here immediately. Is that they're walking along and it could be that these men were probably followers of Jesus. It was not like he was a total stranger to them. Hello? I mean, why else would they be concerned about it? They were talking about it. They were talking about what had happened. As I read that study this week, I don't know. I didn't check with a lot of Bible scholars to see, but I wondered if it was some of the apostles. Some of these guys. I don't know. It just says two of them. But anyhow, they were not able to recognize who he was. Next verse. He asked, what's this you're discussing so intently as you walk along? They just stood there long-faced like they had lost their best friend. Now, did Jesus ask this question because he needed information? Why was Jesus asking this question in your mind? What's the possibility of why he's asking this question? He wanted to know what was in their mind. He wanted them to think about what they were thinking about. He wanted to alert them. And so many times we see Jesus' method and his style of teaching was he would ask questions in the middle of his teaching. And it was not so much because he didn't know the answer to it. It was just because he wanted them to think about it. Yes, what's this you're discussing so intently as you walk along? They just stood there long-faced like they lost their best friend. Next verse. Then one of them, his name was Cleopas. So he was a follower of Jesus, but not one of the apostles. Are you the only one in Jerusalem who hasn't heard what's happened during the last few days? In other words, he apparently had not watched Fox News. You apparently had not seen CNN. You know what I'm saying? You apparently had not watched NBC World News with the ABC World News tonight. I don't know. I can't get them all. I don't listen to them more much. Then one of them said, are you the only one in Jerusalem who hasn't heard what's happened during the last day? It'd be like somebody coming up to us today. You haven't even heard about Ebola. You don't know anything about ISIS? You know what I'm saying? It'd be like current day, today, October the 19th, 2014. I said, come on, man. You haven't heard about this? Next verse. He said, what has happened? They said the things that happened to Jesus of Nazareth. He was a man of God, a prophet, dynamic in work and deed, blessed by both God and all the people. I mean, they were a fan of Jesus. This guy was a fan of Jesus, was he not? Next verse. Then our high priest and leaders betrayed him, got him sentenced to death, and crucified him. And we had our hopes up that he was the one about to deliver Israel. It is now the third day since it happened. The death happened. But now some of our women have completely confused us. Some of you read that as men, you would not be surprised by that. Come on, relax a little bit. There's too many women in the house where the guys would be laughing right now. It's all right. I didn't even think we were confusing. It just means that men are often confused by women. I didn't say it was the women's fault necessarily. Come on, guys. Any of y'all ever been confused by anything a woman said? Raise your hand, please, you men. A few of you the rest of your lives. I'm going to preach about that next Sunday, so don't come back if you don't want to come on the team. But now, some of our women are completely confused. Early this morning, they were at the tomb. Let's keep going. And couldn't find his body. They came back with the story that they had seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. If you listen to these guys a little bit, now maybe my sense of sarcasm a little bit comes in, but can you listen? I like what they completely confused us. They came back with a story. I know how guys think sometimes. I don't, but it's people guys I'm around who would say things like, well, you know, they said they saw a vision of angels who said he was alive, but it was those women who did that, and they confused us. We don't know what's going on. Keep going. Some of our friends were off to the tomb to check and found it empty, just as the women said, but they didn't see Jesus. So now they're like believing it because the dudes went. Yeah. This is real stuff, y'all. Come on. They're starting to believe it now because the dudes went and checked it out. You know, we can't believe what the women said, so we got to go and check it out. Who was that? Peter and John. You remember that in John chapter 20? It details that. They had a foot race racing to the tomb, see who got there first. You know, the disciple whom Jesus loved, John said, beat Peter to the tomb. This is real people. Real people, y'all. Don't try to clean it up and make it Sunday school stained glass kind of stuff. All right? But they didn't see Jesus. Keep going. Then he said to them, so thick-headed, so slow-hearted. Why can't you simply believe all the prophets said? If you think Jesus is always nice, will you read that with me? You know, some of the versions have cleaned it up a little bit. Oh, shallow heart. What does that mean? I have no idea what it means, but I do know what thick-headed means. And I do know that I've been that way a time or two myself. How many of you have ever been told something over and over and over again, and then when it happens, you're like, huh? I just didn't see that coming. Come on, wake up to somebody. Anybody else here? I just didn't see that coming. I didn't see that coming. That's what Jesus is talking about here. I've been telling you this. How many of y'all have parents who have done that with you? You learn something and you come home with it like it's the first time you've ever heard it. You know, the first time. Let me tell you something, Dad, that I learned. And your dad goes, oh, good. Maybe. And inside he's like, fine. It took having to pay college tuition for you to learn that. I think that we wouldn't need colleges if the children would pay attention while they're growing up. I'm not against college. I love college. Okay. So, don't you see that these things had to happen? That the Messiah had to suffer and only then enter into his glory. Then he started to begin with the books of Moses, went on all through the prophets, pointing out everything in the scriptures that referred to him. This was Jesus doing for these two men on the road to Emmaus. They came to the edge of the village where they were headed. He acted as if he was going on. Look how they responded. They pressed him, stay and have supper with us. It's near evening. The day is done. So he went in with them. And here's what happened. He sat down at the table with them, taking the bread. He blessed and broke it and gave it to them. At that moment, open eyes, wide eyes, they recognized him. And then he disappeared. And then he disappeared. Back and forth they talked. Didn't we feel on fire as he conversed with us on the road, as he opened up the scriptures for us? Didn't we feel on fire as he conversed with us on the road, as he opened up the scriptures? It's like, yeah, okay. I think that to use some of our phrases, to pull in some of the phrases we've been using, is maybe we need to adopt a lifestyle that not only says, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. Maybe we ought to adopt the phrase, Father, forgive me, for I don't know what I'm doing. But maybe we could use a third phrase from today's lesson that would say, Father, forgive us, for we sometimes have no idea what you're doing. Father, forgive us, for we sometimes have no idea what you're doing. We try to figure it out. We want to figure it out. We want it to make sense. We want to try to make it work. But then we have to say, Father, forgive us. For we don't even know what you are doing. Can we talk about this for a little bit? What are some ways, you talk to me that you finally figured out sometimes in your life that you really did not understand what God was doing until sometime later? Anybody? Gabrielle kind of touched on it a little bit, is that she felt a sense of calling about sign language, right? Maybe it didn't all make sense to her. Hello? But she went. I back up to Luke 23 when I say, what does it take for me to live a lifestyle that says, Father, forgive me, for I don't always know what you're doing. What does it take for me to live that lifestyle and be okay with it? With that statement? Faith. And I think it goes back to that verse I used at the beginning today, after the first song of worship that we had, that said, when Jesus said, Father, I place my life in your hands. Father, I place my life in your hands. What difference does that, or could that make for us if we adopt that phrase as kind of the way we live our life? Father, forgive me because I sometimes have no idea what you're doing. First of all, I think it would, number one, save me from having to figure it all out. How many of you are ready to follow Jesus as long as you know what the end result will be? That's pretty easy, isn't it? As long as you got it all laid out and it works just like I'm thinking it's going to work. Hello? I'm going to take that step. I'm going to forgive that person because I believe that's what you want me to do. But it doesn't make any sense to me. Because to me, forgiving them will mean the following. And I won't even know what you're doing or how you're doing it. And so I'll have to walk around in my life, spending my life trying to figure out, if I do that, what will be the outcome? Some years ago in the church, when I was growing up, and that's been at least 20 years ago, there were people who had everything figured out about how Jesus was going to come back and when he was going to come back and the date. Every date I heard of when Jesus was going to come back, when I was a kid, we've already passed them. We've already passed them. And so we changed the dates. There are whole groups of people, religious groups, who have set their whole thing built around the fact that they were convinced that at such and such a time, this is what Jesus would do. I actually think Jesus is, I think you're pretty safe when the date comes out. I think you're pretty safe that probably ain't going to happen. Because we spend so much time trying to figure God out. Why is that happening? What's going on there? What's going on? We try to figure it out. May I ask you a question? In the time when you spend a lot of time trying to figure things out, tell me how that's worked. You get stuck. Anybody agree with Steve here? You get stuck. What do we get stuck on? Somebody besides Steve. What do we get stuck on?
Stupid.
Pardon? Unbelief, you think?
Things we don't know.
Things we don't know. We get stuck on things we don't know. Afraid to make a mistake. Turns into worry a lot of times. Yep. It'll drive you crazy. Hello? Confusion. It's going to lead to confusion, doesn't it? Bitterness, yeah.
If you got to forgive somebody that's been me wrong, even God tells you to do that, and you keep focusing on the fact that you have to do that day by day by day, instead of letting Jesus take care of it. All you think about is, who did me wrong? Who did me wrong? Who did me wrong?
The antidote for that would be a lifestyle that said, Father, forgive me, for I don't even know how to forgive. Father, forgive me, because I don't even know how to give up my worry. I heard a man in the group I was at breakfast yesterday say he had to come to a point of decision like this. Father, forgive me, I have no idea what I'm doing. It was a parenting issue. How many of you know that'll help if you're a parent? Wave at somebody. Come on, parents, wave at me. If you just get to the point and say, Father, forgive me, I don't even know how to parent in this situation. You stand there. Well, that's my book. Is that in there? Is that in there? Is that in that book? That ain't in that book. Oh, my child is different, so I got to go find a different book. And, I do fatherhood stuff. I love talking about parenting. Don't get me wrong. I think there's some value in that. I love books, y'all. Those of you know me know I love books. But I've learned that, I can read a whole bunch of stuff, and I still say, Father, forgive me, I still don't know what to do in my situation, in that situation. When I learned how to give it up, to surrender it, some things start happening inside of me, even if my circumstances do not change. You see, God did not guarantee you that if you do the following, your circumstances will be just fine. But we have an assumption that we don't even know what God's doing, and so we think that if I do the following, then this definitely will happen. It's a formula for success. It's a formula for success. And so some people people give so they can get back. Jesus was just saying, and the scripture was just saying, when you give, one of the things that happens is things do come back, but you will start trying to figure out, now how much should I give to get that? Wave at me, someone. Anybody know what I'm talking about? How much do I have to give? Do I have to tithe? Do I have to give all my money to the poor? Like that guy in John, that was the old New Testament. Wasn't it? I have to give all my stuff? You know, I'm not even talking about money to the church. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about how we think. Are you with me here? So if I do this, then that'll happen. And many of you have heard me tell the story about looking down the hall at Holman Prison years ago, and I looked down the hall, and there was a guy. I could see him in the distance. He was right down there by a trash can, a big, large trash can in the Holman Prison. He had a Bible held way up over his head, and he slam dunked it into the trash can. I was not able, because of security reasons, to go down there right away and see what was going on. What do you think might have been happening? You think that was I'm happy with Jesus and I want to follow him? David, remember what happened there? I think perhaps, maybe, I don't know, but some of his expectations were not met. So let's just take this Bible and shove it into the trash can. Hello? God, I've been serving you all this time, and you let that happen. Because in our culture, good things happen to good people. Really?
Okay, then.
Really? And all the bad things happen to the bad people. Really? I've seen some bad people got a whole lot more money than I got. Come on. Huh? Did I repeat that?
Yeah.
I've seen some people that are living a whole lot different, worse life to me than I'm living, and they got a whole lot more stuff than I got. Some of our preachers today would say, that's because you ain't need to give it. You've been planting the seed in the right place. Hallelujah. That's what some of them say. So we start trying to figure all this stuff out. Am I for generosity? Absolutely. As Jesus was generous, he gave it away. But you see, you hear what I'm talking about? I'm talking about figuring it out. Father, forgive me. I don't even know sometimes what you're doing. Now, do I think that God is supposed to keep us ignorant? No. And just, that he loves it? No, but he's telling us, I'm already talking to you about this, and you aren't listening. You know what Jesus told those two guys? Don't you know from the scriptures? Don't you know from this? So here's what I know. From my life and my experience, is when I place my life in his hands, something starts happening to me. When I place my life in his hands, something first starts happening to me. When I place my life in his hands, something first starts happening to me. Hello? And when you place your life in his hands, something first will start happening to you. From the inside out. Being transformed from the inside out. The song that the worship team led us this morning said, we're calling on fire. What's the fire for? It's to purify, it's to cleanse, it's to set our hearts ablaze. And when our hearts are set ablaze, we don't worry so much about figuring out. You see, some years ago, I went through a personal thing in my life where I was really, really frustrated and discouraged, and I wasn't sure what the future of my life would look financially like and so forth. And when I went through that, it was torturous for me. I'm German. And when you're German, you got to have your junk together. Y'all know what I'm talking about? You got to have it lined up. You got to have these shirts right. You got to have the future needs to be nailed down a little bit. You need to know this and you need to know that. And I realized that after all these years, many, many years ago, I placed my life in his hands. But over the years, I had taken the wheel. So who sings that song? if I do this, I can do this, if I do this, and if I do that, then this will happen. And boom! Didn't work. Didn't work. And so I saw myself as failure when all God wanted to say. So, but you know what? When I went through that period of time in life, I thought, you know what? No matter what it looks like in the future for me, financially and otherwise, I have Jesus who changed me from the inside out. I have my wife and Lord, our children. I have a family of people who love me and Jesus, and we will be just fine. And by the way, I remember a time when we were right after we were married when I didn't have money to pay a $15 bill. And if you can do it when I was 22, you can do it when I'm 52, when I'm 62, when I'm 72. Heaven forbid when I'm 80. Well, there may not be no Social Security.
So,
All y'all young folks ain't paying nothing to it. No, we might all just get wiped out, Lord. Huh? The world's going to hell in a handbasket. It ain't like it used to be, y'all. Where I grew up in Georgia was wonderful, except if you were black. I'm serious. We got to quit this stuff. We got to quit acting like God took care of us back then and everything was beautiful, but He might not now. Father, forgive me. I don't even know what you're doing sometimes. This stuff don't make any sense to me. Does it make any sense to you? Well, I know it's because of this, and it's because of that, and it's because of this. Do you really? Or would you just rather place your life in His hands? I'm testifying to you today, He can be trusted. In the middle of near-death experiences, in the middle of death and sickness, in the middle of evil supernatural activity, in the middle of evil brokenness all around us, in the middle of my sin, in the middle of your sin, in the middle of our sin, is I can place my life in His hands. It may not look the way I want it to. I might even be mad about it. I may be thick-headed about it. I may be this, but when I place my life in His hands, something changes. And many of you have done it. Some of you know the experience of going down into a prison camp and being stripped of everything except something in a box. We've got people sitting in this room who can testify that when that happened, they were closer to Jesus than they had ever been in their life. I need to hear something from somebody. Huh? How can that happen? Because when I quit trying to figure it out and make it happen myself, I place my life in His hands and say, man, I ain't got nothing else but you. I don't have anything else but you. I just don't ever lose that. I know many of you have experienced it, if not all of you. Maybe in better ways than I have. But Father, forgive me, because sometimes I don't even know what you're doing. Stand with me. Derek, I'd like to go home and do strong power as we close today. Now, Lord Jesus, we come to you today. And we say, Father, forgive us because sometimes we have no idea even what you're doing. Forgive us for trying to figure it out. Forgive us for trying to figure other people out. Today we just say, Father, forgive them, for they don't even know what they do. We say about ourselves, Father, forgive me, for I don't even know what I do. So many times. But Father, forgive us, because sometimes we have no idea what you're doing. Please forgive us, even though you tried to teach us and tell us. And you've proven yourself many times over and over to us to be faithful. In fact, as one person reminded us, so many of us are so worried about what's going to happen next with us. What's going to happen to our economy? What's going to happen to this? What's going to happen to us personally? We don't even understand that In many cases, some of the times when Jesus walked on earth and was there, even the poorest of people we know would be considered very wealthy in the eyes of the people back then. So when you told them don't worry about anything, it wasn't because they were people who, back when you was recorded it, and you spoke that on the Sermon on the Mount, that there were people who already had their life insurance policy together. They had their retirement together. They had all these things together. They had their life planned out the way they wanted it. And it was all going to be just, that's not when you told them, okay, now it's okay not to worry. What you said even then as you came and broke in on history, the history of mankind and the person of Jesus, and when you broke in, you told us many, many things about not worrying about this, about forgiving those who have harmed us. You told us about trusting you and placing our life in your hands. But you not only said that, Lord Jesus, while you hung on the cross and as you breathed your last, your final words were, Father, I place my hands, my life in your hands. I want to invite all of you right now that will. Maybe it's just a reminder for you. But I wonder if you'll say the words, Father, I place my life in your hands. As a commitment, a recommitment, a reminder even. Say it with me. I invite you to say it with me together now. Father, I place my life in your hands. Lord Jesus, we know we're in good hands with Jesus. We're in good hands with the Father. So we place our life in your hands. Change us from the inside out. You are a strong tower, mighty. We can place our life in your hands because we have received the things that you would have us to receive. They're available to us. We can have them. Right before we sing, I want you to listen to these words. You are a beloved child of the true King. Your origins are epic. God's love, wisdom, and power is the most powerful force in the whole universe. More than all superpowers combined. And his love, wisdom, and power is in you and flows through you as you live out the greatest mission ever done to mankind. To love God and love others. And on the days that you don't feel like you're enough, remember that love, wisdom, and power never fails. And God's love, wisdom, and power always covers and empowers you. Are you enough? Can you make a difference? Can you change? The answer is yes. As you place your life, the strong tower, mighty to deliver.